Malik and Malaika arrived at the Jeddah International Airport after very long trip from the United States of America to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The first thing that caught their attention was the masses of passengers. Every year, over 3 million Muslims from all over the world arrive in Saudi Arabia to perform the Hajj rituals. It was impossible for the person to move one step forwards in that crowded arrival hall without touching or being touched by a stranger. Even a young married woman like Malaika couldn't prevent male passengers from physically contacting her body and violating her privacy. Many times, she felt hands purposely touching her chest, backside, legs, and parts around her privates. The only thing she could do was to keep pushing away those hands and protect her body as much as she could. More than once, she felt a male body on her backside rubbing his erect organ on her back or buttocks. To prevent it, Malaika asked her husband to watch her back. Whenever Malik walked behind her and shielded her back, Malaika found herself being exposed from the front and male hands would keep reaching out to her breasts and touching them. Finally, she understood that she could do nothing to stop those evil men from forcing themselves on her body. When they reached the airport's authorities, the couple were asked to surrender their passports, cell phones, cameras, laptops, and any other electronic devices. They were told that those belongings would be returned to them on the day of their departure. It took them over 2 hours to emerge out of that sea of passengers and climbed into a crowded bus. Fortunately, as soon as they entered the bus, Malaika found an empty seat between two African women. When she sat, she felt her dress was wet from behind. She stretched her hand and examined the liquid that was smearing her dress. She was shocked when she found semen on her dress. She became extremely angry. She knew she could do nothing to punish that wicked man who dared to abuse her to that extent. She just opened her hand back, took out her handkerchief, and wiped away the dirt. Then, immediately, she threw her hanky inside the bus as if it was a toilet paper in a washroom. If she could, she would have flushed it out through the window. The bus took over 3 hours to travel a distance of 80 kilometers between Jeddah and Mecca. In normal days, the car would cover that distance in less than an hour. When they reached the Muslims' holiest city on earth, the bus dropped them in a place where the rituals of the Hajj were supposed to commence. Once again, the couple found themselves in more crowded place than the airport arrival hall. They could hardly advance one step forward without pushing and forcing their way through the masses of pilgrims. There were no separated places for ladies. Males and females were mixing freely. There were also no restrictions for the movements of women. Even the washrooms were opened for both sexes. Every woman was wearing hijab or abaya, cloak, while her face and hands were exposed. Women were not permitted to perform the Hajj rituals while their faces were covered by niqabs or burqas. Ironically, women were not allowed to reveal their faces and expose their hands in any public place in the entire Kingdom of Saudi Arabia except in the two holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Male pilgrims were hardly covering their bodies. They were wrapping their lower parts, while their upper parts were half exposed. Men were not allowed to wear any underwear. Every male pilgrim was covering his body with a small white sheet of linen known as the ihram dress. If anyone else stepped on that bed sheet-like covering, the male pilgrim would become fully naked. Malaika was astonished when she saw Malik and other male pilgrims were dressed up in those semi-naked garments. Even men in beaches wouldn't agree to come out in public in those costumes. Once again, Malaika found herself facing those annoying sexual harassment by the male pilgrims. Her marvelous beauty and sensual body made her a marked target for lustful men. This time, the harassment was more serious than the previous one. She regretted that coming to this hellish country. When she was in America, she heard many stories about the strict segregation between males and females in the Arab countries, especially in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Moreover, her childhood memory still retained some images of Saudi women of Jeddah who wrapped their entire bodies with those black abayas, cloaks. Her first day, in the holy city of the Muslims refuted those claims and childhood memories. The cultural shock that overtook Malika by surprise compelled Malik to try to educate his wife in some of the scanty information he gathered at college about the Hajj. He told her that the Hajj rituals were religious practices, which the pagans of Arabia practiced them hundreds of years before the advent of Islam. The Hajj had nothing to do with Judaism and Christianity. It was called by the Arab polytheists hak, rubbing of the body. Pagan women used to rub their bodies against the Kaaba, the Black House, and apply their menses blood on the black stone to increase their fertility. Pagan men, on the other hand, performed their rituals naked. Instead of rubbing bodies they kissed the black stone. Women likewise, used to perform the Hajj rituals fully naked, but at night, while the men performed them in the day. Islam incorporated all the pagan rituals of the Hajj with slight changes. According to the Arab historian, Abu Zanad, who wrote in 747 AD, Hajj rituals and the fasting of Ramadan were pagan ceremonies practiced by the Arab Sabians and Haranians. Ramadan predated Islam. It originated in the ancient Arabian Baal worship. Muhammad's father and grandfather were pagans who worshipped Baal. Muhammad followed the religion of his father and grandfather and fasted from childhood as a Baal believer. Moreover, from early age, Muhammad practiced Hajj rituals, which also part of the pagan Arabs' worship of the moon god, Baal. Narrated Izam, I asked Anas ibn Malik, did you used to dislike to perform tawaf between Safa and Marwa? He said, yes, as it was of ceremonies of the days of Jahiliyyah, days of ignorance or pre-Islamic period, till Allah revealed, verily. The two mountains, as Safa and Al-Marwa, are among the symbols of Allah. It is therefore no sin for him who performs the pilgrimage to Kaaba, or performs Umrah, to perform tawaf between them. Sahih al-Bukhari Volume 2, Book 26, page 710, Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah 2, 158. As Safa and Al-Marwa originally were two idols of the Qurayshi tribe named Asaf and Naila. Those two idols were placed in two mountains known as Al-Safa and Al-Marwa. The polytheist Arabs used to worship those idols. According to the Jordanian historian, Dr. Rafat Amari, Asaf and Naila were names of real Jewish couple who claimed to be gods and made the pagan Arabs to worship them. After their death, the Arabs continued to worship them as Al-Safa and Al-Marwa. Dr. Amari maintained that Asaf and Naila had sex inside the holy Kaaba, and for that transgression God punished them by transferring them into the two idols, Al-Safa and Al-Marwa. Muhammad incorporated in his Quran this pagan ritual of Al-Safa and Al-Marwa, Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah 2, 158. The Arabian Baal religion is mentioned in the Quran in Surah Al-Hajj 22, 17, Surah Al-Baqarah 2, 62, and Surah Al-Ma'idah 5, 69. The Quran and the Sunnah incorporated many pagan practices of the Arab polytheists of Mecca and also borrowed extensively from the Sabians of Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq. The Sabians were also Arab tribes who observed fasting 30 days in the year, Ramadan, and prayed 7 times in the day. Islam retained 5 of them. Moreover, they celebrated 2 festivals in the year, the first one immediately after completing 30 days of fasting, and the second during their visit to Mecca for performing the Hajj rituals. Many Muslim historians, commentators, and scholars openly admitted that Islam is continuation of the pagan Arabs' Baal worship. See Ibn Hazm, Volume 1, page 34, Ibn al-Jawzi, page 84, Al-Masudi in Muraj al-Thahab, Volume 2, page 213, Ibn Hajar in Al-Isaba 4, page 315, Tafsir al-Tabari 16, page 56, etc. The Black Stone. The ancient pagan Hajj festival was in actual fact a temple prostitution practice. Women offered themselves to men as part of their pagan worship of their many idols, male gods and female goddesses. The ancient Canaanite god Baal, or El, the god of fertility to the ancient Arabs, was known as Ilah, plural as Allah. The Black Stone was considered the cornerstone of the Black Kaaba. The pagan Arab women came to the Black House of Allah every year to perform the Hajj rituals and offer themselves to the male pilgrims as temple prostitutes. Allah had 3 daughters, Al-Lat, Alua, and Manat. Those 3 female goddesses represented all women. There were 360 idols inside and around the area of the Black House. Although Islam removed all idols from the Kaaba, it spared the black stone. An Egyptian Muslim scholar said that the black stone was made in the shape of woman's vagina. Back then, Arab pagans would worship the private parts of the woman, and that is also why the women would apply their menses blood on the vagina like black stone, and men continue to kiss it to the present day. According to the renowned Muslim historian, Al-Tabari, the Kaaba's black stone used to be white but turned black because it was fingered by menstruating women, Al-Tabari Book 1, page 298. Today, due to the crowd, a female pilgrim might not be able to reach the black stone and touch it with her fingers, but she was required to point her right hand towards it from afar. The Muslim man is expected to try kissing it at least once during his 7 circlings around the Kaaba. According to the Islamic theology, the kissing of the black stone does not have much spiritual significance, but Muslim men are expected to do it because the Prophet Muhammad used to kiss it whenever he performed his Hajj rituals. The second caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab, said while he was kissing the black stone, "I know you are just a stone and can do no good or bad to me, but I am kissing you because I saw the Messenger of Allah kissing you." The Caliph Umar might not know why the Prophet Muhammad had kissed the black stone, but for the pagan Arabs, the kissing of that stone was a form of worshipping the woman's vagina. Muslim men until today are continuing to worship the vagina of the woman whether they know it or not. Therefore, Muslims should not make fun of the Indian Jains who worship the phallus of Mahavira, the founder of their religion Jainism. Present-day Hajj rituals begin with the Kaaba but are extended to other places. There are 5 rituals which every pilgrim must perform. Each pilgrim walks counterclockwise 7 times around the Kaaba, the cube-shaped small black building which acts as the Muslim direction of prayer, runs back and forth between the hills of Al-Safa and Al-Marwa, drinks from the Zamzam well, goes to the plains of Mount Arafat to stand in vigil, and throws stones in a ritual stoning of the devil, symbolizing the stoning of Satan. Zamzam well's water is considered to be a holy water which heals sickness, quenches thirst, satisfies hunger, and bestows blessing on the person who drinks it. First of all, the original Zamzam well's water dried up many centuries ago. Today, the Saudi authorities supply ordinary water to the well through huge underground connected water lines. Of course, this fact is concealed from the pilgrims. Secondly, in May 2011 a BBC investigation found there is fraudulent water sold as Zamzam water in UK, which involves high health risks. Those 5 Hajj rituals had to be completed in 5 days, starting on the 8th day and ending on the 12th day of Dhul Hijjah, the month of Hajj. Before Islam came, the 2 hills of Al-Safa and Al-Marwa had 1 idol in each. The Arab polytheists used to run from one hill to the other and bow down to each idol. Moreover, the polytheists used to throw stones at the dying sun, at sunset, but Islam changed it to stoning Satan. Satan is a fallen angel, and angels are spirits. How can someone stone a spiritual being with stones? The same stones would be collected and kept for next year to be used again for the same purpose. The problem: each year hundreds of pilgrims are hit by stones with some being seriously injured. Many pilgrims get killed during the stampedes at Al-Safa and Al-Marwa. Thousands of pilgrims are killed yearly during these chaotic pagan rituals. According to New York Times, on September 24, 2015, the death toll of pilgrims who died due to stampede has reached 2,411 persons. New York Times. By Rick Gladstone, December 10, 2015. Saudi thugs and Hajj mafia kidnap female children and young women, take them to the desert, rape and murder them yearly. The Islamic Hajj is immoral, inhuman and satanic ritual. During those 5 days, Malaika went through countless sexual harassment incidents. She could not believe Muslim men who came over to perform a religious obligation would violate women on a similar pilgrimage. Young women were not plentiful, and so she became a highly visible target for sexual harassment everywhere her feet took her. Her husband quarreled many times with those evil men who made his wife an object of their sexual fantasies. Those male pilgrims who could not reach her physically kept staring at her as if she was walking bare naked in front of their eyes. In short, Malaika endured a lot during those 5 days of performing those satanic rituals. Unfortunately, what the couple came to see and study in the Muslim world was not to be found in Mecca. They came to see how Saudi women were treated in that male-dominated country. However, what they had seen and experienced was more than what they could have expected to see in a bar or nightclub that full of drunkards and drug addicts. While the pilgrims were encircling the Black Kaaba, Malik and Malaika felt great heaviness in their chests and almost suffocated due to lack of fresh air. When the pilgrims began to stone the devil, Malaika had unbearable headache. No one could convince her and her husband that there was no strong presence of unseen forces of darkness. On that day, Malaika thought that the devil would kill her for daring to step in his territory. Malik also fell very sick and began to experience nausea. It was nothing short of a miracle, when those 5 days passed by without any one of them being suffocated to death during those unholy and immoral pagan rituals. In spite of the many problems that Malaika had experienced during those 5 days, still she was able to talk to some Muslim women. She pretended that she was a new convert to Islam and working on an academic research through which she wanted to answer the critique of non-Muslims in the West. Her husband had prepared a set of questions and told her to ask every Muslim woman she would talk to. Most of the women she talked to were from Pakistan and India. Due to language barriers, she could not able to speak to female pilgrims coming from Arabian lands and African countries. She was amazed that almost all the Muslim women she interviewed gave similar answers to her questions. All of them denied that they were abused by their fathers when they were under their authority and control or by their husbands when they got married. Moreover, all women said that Islam is a religion of peace and honored the woman. Malaika discussed with some of them some anti-feminine practices such as polygamy, child marriage, female genital mutilation, wife beating, liability of the wife to be divorced and her inability to divorce her husband, custody of children after divorce goes to the father, and inability of some Muslim women to go to school or work. Most of them said to Malaika that they don't see anything wrong with those religious practices as long as they are justified by their holy Quran and the blessed Sunnah, sayings and deeds of Muhammad, of their gracious prophet. Not every place in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was considered a holy ground. Only Mecca, Medina, and other some small towns were called Arad al-Hijaz, the land of Hajj. Foreigners and other non-Muslims who were visiting or working in Saudi Arabia were allowed to visit and live in every city in the kingdom except the land of Hajj. If a non-Muslim was caught in that forbidden holy area, he would be executed by the Saudi authorities. Muslims believed that if non-Muslim, kafir or infidel, pretended to be a Muslim and went to those holy cities, he or she would be exposed by Allah. There were many stories of such intruders who went near the black house of Allah, Kaaba. As soon as their feet touched that holy ground, they began to shake, scream, and fell down on the ground and began to roll around like epileptic people. Then, those trespassers were arrested by the Kaaba police and got interrogated. They admitted that they were not Muslims but pretenders. Shortly, after their confessions were either got beheaded or stoned to death by the faithful Muslims. Many innocent people were caught in the past and accused of being pretenders or spying for Israel or agents of the West and put to death. Nevertheless, there were some non-Muslims who succeeded in visiting the Black Kaaba without being caught. The most famous case was Richard Burton, who pretended to be a Muslim pilgrim and visited the Kaaba. Somehow, Burton managed to reach the black stone and take a small piece from it. When he safely returned to his country, he subjected the piece to a scientific test. The test proved that the black stone was part of the shattered pieces of a meteor. Before the advent of Islam, The Arab polytheists venerated two types of stones, volcanic and meteoric, because they believed the former erupted from the earth and the latter fell from the walls of the house of Allah in heaven. When Richard Burton returned to Europe and announced his secret visit to the Black Kaaba and his discovery about the origin of the Black Stone, he created great indignation within the Muslim world. The anger of Muslims was intensified when he claimed that his discovery refuted all the false claims of the Islamic myths that the Black Stone is a holy stone. The most widely accepted myth said that, when Adam was driven by Allah out of paradise and sent down to earth, he took with him one of the stones of heaven and brought with him. Then, Adam built the first house of Allah at Mecca and placed that heavenly stone as a cornerstone. However, the Arab polytheists corrupted the Hajj rituals that Adam taught them and destroyed the house which he built for Allah, until Allah sent Abraham and his son Ishmael, who rebuilt the Kaaba and purified it of all pagan worship. Once again, the devil used the Arab polytheists to corrupt the holy worship of Adam, Abraham, and Ishmael until finally Allah sent the seal of all his prophets and messengers, Muhammad. Then, Allah promised that after his final messenger he will not allow anyone to corrupt the worship of the Hajj. Anyway, after the secret visit of Richard Burton and his great discovery, the Saudi authorities became stricter with the pilgrims, especially those coming from Western countries. Before a Western pilgrim visa was issued to him at the Saudi embassy, his background would be carefully scrutinized, and also before admitting him in the Holy Land he would be carefully investigated and interrogated by the Saudi authorities. The Quran made so many false claims regarding the existence of the city of Mecca and the building of its Kaaba by Abraham and his son Ishmael. The city of Mecca was not there at the time of Abraham. It came into existence only in the 4th century AD. Mecca was built in the 4th century AD by the tribe of Hosea. None of the BC historians or missions such as Herodotus, Pliny, Ptolemy, the militarily missions of Alexander the Great, or the Roman missions, who either visited Arabia or wrote about the tribes and cities of that region, had mentioned a city by the name of Mecca. Estimates as to the era in which Abraham lived can vary from 2100 BC to 1800 BC. So, Abraham and his son Ishmael lived over 2 centuries before Mecca came into existence. Therefore, the claim that Abraham and his son had built the Kaaba is false and cannot be proved by any historical record or archaeological evidence. Historians and archaeologists proved that Mecca did not come into existence until the 4th century AD, almost 2,500 years after the time of Abraham and his sons Ishmael. The founder of the Hanafiya cult, Zayd ibn Amr, was the first Arab man to falsely claim that Abraham and his son Ishmael had built the Kaaba. Muhammad inherited this false claim and included in his Quran. The best thing to conclude our accounts of the Hajj is to refer to a true testimony of a first-hand witness. A Western convert, who dared to visit that hellish place with 2 of her close relatives, had said, "The Hajj is the most horrifying and immoral experience a Muslim woman could ever have in her life." She was a Muslim woman who performed the Hajj with her husband and sister. She made the following comments on her visit to the holiest place of Muslims: "What I saw in Masjid ul-Haram was the worst sight of all. Masjid ul-Haram is the sacred mosque. It is the largest mosque in the world. Located in the city of Mecca, it surrounds the Kaaba, the place that Muslims worldwide turn towards while performing daily prayers, and is Islam's holiest place." She continues to say, "I saw almost 1 million people squished in that small place, sleeping on the floor, on the steps, and even in bathrooms. Eating their foods in bathrooms. That itself was gross. There was no place to perform Hajj peacefully. There was not even enough place to breathe fresh air. There was a sea of human beings. Public bathrooms and toilets were full of feces and urine, and on top of that people were sleeping in those places, eating food, and exposing their small kids to those extremely noxious and contaminating environmental conditions where there was nothing but human filth and stink. Everyone was coughing and was sick, so many people were having food poisoning." Hajj, My Broken Dream, by Zina Zina. Zina continued to say, "During Tawaf, when we have to take 7 circles around Kaaba, I saw men squishing and squeezing other people without caring for anyone. I was shocked to see their aggressive behavior. Everyone wanted to go into that place and be done with 7 circles. So many people died because of stampede, and I saw them dying, and other people jumping on their dead bodies without any feeling. While I was doing my circles, all of a sudden I saw few groups of black Nigerian and Somalian men and also Iranian men jump inside, pushing others including women. It was such a chaotic gathering that I was shocked and speechless. All I was experiencing and observing was people pushing and pulling physically the weaker and letting them die and then running over their dead bodies. A point came when these groups came closer to me. I felt my whole body was being squeezed forcefully from both sides, and I felt as if I am dying any time, and I didn't feel that I could breathe, till I gathered my whole strength and screamed, "Stop it, you animals, enough is enough, what use of this hatch, if you have no feelings for your fellow humans?" All of a sudden I felt some kind hand pull me out of this psychotic crowd, and that was my own sister, who rescued me out. Thank God. It was the end of my last circle. I was pale, shivering, nauseous and dizzy. All my dreams about performing hatch were shattered by now. All I saw was extreme selfishness, filth, extreme cruelty, aggression, and psychotic behavior. Where was the main essence of hatch? Where was humanity? Where were humans? Majority of people were not humans. Yes, they were acting like some jungle beasts which are struggling for survival. Zena summarized her horrifying experiences by saying, "It is a violation of human rights to allow 3 million people including young children to gather together in the name of religion called Hajj, subject to dying, being looted, plundered, wounded, being exposed to different diseases, sleeping with feces and urine, women being exposed to strangers in an unethical way, being used in the name of religion, being discriminated racially and based of gender, being divided as rich and poor, being hijacked by Saudi thugs, being cheated by Hajj mafia, or Hajj companies, being tormented by fellow humans."